NHL regular season recap, night 164. A ton of games today. The first one, the Red Wings taking on the Florida Panthers, a game with some pretty big playoff implications. The Panthers looking for the one spot in the Atlantic Division. The Red Wings, of course, just trying to get into the playoffs. It looks good early on. Robbie Fabry scoring the only goal in the first, no goals in the second, but in the third, Sasha Barkov takes over 2 goals in the third with about 3 and 7 minutes to go, respectively. Dylan Larkin would score to tie it before the end of regulation, and then in the overtime, Sam Reinhart, the only goal scorer. Bob, pretty solid, 20 of 22. Alex Line was better, 36 of 38, but just not quite enough to get the W here. Unfortunate for Detroit. They do get the 1 point, but Florida comes away with 2. It's a 3-2 final in a shootout. The Wild hosting the Vegas Golden Knights in another pretty big game here from Minnesota, desperate to get some points against one of the teams they're chasing, and just not quite able to do it tonight. Kirill Kaprizov scoring the first goal of the game in the second period, but Michael Amadio ties it with about 6 minutes to go in the third. We head to OT. The Wild pull their goalie to try to confirm the 2 points, and Jonathan Marchessault scores on the empty netter, which means, for those of you that didn't know, if you pull your goalie in overtime and you get scored on, you lose your secured overtime points. So despite this game going to OT, it's 2 points for Vegas, no points for the Wild, and it's a 2-1 win here for the Golden Knights. Both goalies quite good tonight. Philip Gustafsson, 29 of 30 for a .967, but Logan Thompson, once again, just marginally better, 32 of 33 for a .970. Back-to-back phenomenal performances from him. He carries the Golden Knights to victory here. 2-1 is the final in overtime. The Oilers hosting the Ducks, and this was kind of an angry performance from Edmonton. They just pound the ever-living crap out of Anaheim. 3 goals in the first, 2 in the second, and 1 in the third for the Oilers. The Ducks do ruin the shutout bid with about 4 minutes to go, so that's unfortunate for Calvin Pickard. Henrique, McDavid, and Ekholm in the first, McDavid and Fogle in the second, and Zach Hyman in the third. Alex Killorn with the lone goal for the Ducks. Gibson, kind of a rough night, 31 of 37 for an .838, and again, Pickard robbed of the shutout, but still pretty good, 21 of 22 for a .955, and really just a dominant winning effort from the Oilers. The Avs hosting the Predators, looking to make it 2 losses in a row for the team that had formerly been on an 18-game point streak, and they successfully do that. A bit of a high-flying first period. Smith, Drouin, Jankowski, Fabro, and Middlestat all scoring, so 3-2 Preds after 1. But in the second, the Avs kind of take over after Gus Nyquist makes it a 4-2 game less than a minute into the second period. It's Lehkonen, Makar, and Yakov Trenin all scoring to regain the lead for the Avs. 5-4 headed to the third, and then in the third, McKinnon takes over. He scores 1 about 3.5 in, and then an empty netter with about 4 minutes to play, his 46th and 47th of the year, and it's a 7-4 win for the Avs. Justus Annunen came in relief in the, I guess, in the second period, right? He goes 22 for 22. Kevin Lankinen, 35 of 41 was not a bad performance from him, just got shelled by this Avs team that is so offensively gifted, it's kind of crazy, and they take care of business tonight. 7-4 is the final. The Rangers taking on the Coyotes, and history was made tonight in a few ways. Alexis Lafreniere, his first career hat trick in this one, and it was a 5-point night for him. And then Jonathan Quick becoming the most winning American-born goaltender of all time in this one, surpassing Ryan Miller. It was not a pretty one, an 8-5 final for the Rangers. Lafreniere, the only goal in the first. Lindgren, Michelli, Lafreniere again, Keller, and Bukestad in the second. And then in the third, the Rangers really sealed the deal. Kreider, Jones, Gaudreau, Krause, Cooley, Panarin, and the third goal from Lafreniere. Again, an 8-5 final here. Quick, 27 of 32 and .844. Certainly not the best of his wins, but they'll take the 2 points regardless. Karel Vejmelka, a little bit worse than Quick, actually. 24 of 34 and .800. Definitely not his best night, but an entertaining game. The Rangers get it done. 8-5 is the final in Mullet Arena. The Canadiens hosting the Hurricanes, and this Hurricanes team just looks locked and loaded for the playoffs. They can score goals, they can shut you down, their goaltending's really solid, and they got a little bit of all of that tonight. Jordan Staal opens the scoring about halfway through the game, 9:33 into the second period. In the third, Sebastian Aho scores on the power play, his 33rd of the year, to make it 2-0, and then Seth Jarvis with his 29th on the empty net. Pyotr Kochetkov got the start in this one, and even though he's technically the backup now, 26 of 26, the shutout effort in the victory. Sam Montembeault is pretty good here for the Canadiens, 27 of 29, but of course, no goal support means you cannot win the game regardless of how good you are. It's a solid game from the Hurricanes, and honestly, it was a good game from the Canadiens, just not able to capitalize on any of their chances. But again, this Hurricanes team looks ready to roll for the playoffs. Definitely not a team you want to see in the first round or really any round, but someone's going to have to take care of it. The Canes tonight, though, winning 3-0 over Montreal. The Senators taking on the Jets, and suddenly the Senators team actually looks pretty good, and the Jets are not looking good headed into the playoffs. The Sens win it by a final score of 3-2. Nick Ehlers opens the scoring about 2 minutes into the second. Boris Kachuk, though, about a minute and a half later, ties us up, and then Ridley Gregg, with about 6.5 to go in the second, makes it 2-1. Mark Scheifele would tie it about halfway through the third, but Brady Kachuk, the captain, with the heartbreaker, less than 2 minutes to go on the power play, makes it a 3-2 game, and that would stand as the game winner. Jonas Korpisalo was very good once again in this one, 28 of 30 for a 933. It would have been really interesting to see what could have been of the Senators team if he had played like he has over the past week and a half for the entire year, but if it's ifs and buts or candies and nuts, we all know how that goes. 24 of 27 for Connor Hellebuck and 889. Not his best effort, but did enough to keep his team in the game. Just not enough goal support here. It's a 3-2 victory for Ottawa over a struggling Winnipeg team. The Flyers hosting a Chicago in as much of a must-win game as Philly could possibly have, facing a bad Chicago team, like no other way to put it, and they lose handily. Lucas Reichel and Philip Kurashev both scoring in the first period. Ty Forrester makes it a one-goal game just 17 seconds into the second, but with about 2.5 to go in the frame, Nick Foligno on the power play makes it a 3-1 game, and then in the third, Anderson and Entwistle both score, and it's a 5-1 final. Sam Ersson once again not good enough, 19 of 24, while Soderblom 30 of 31 for a 968, and he ends up saving the win here for Chicago. 5-1 is the final. Blue Jackets hosting the Penguins, and this was a surprisingly back-and-forth bang. Matthew Olivier scoring shorthanded, the only goal in the first. O'Connor and Rust bringing it back in the second to make it 2-1 Penguins. Raquel makes it 3-1 about halfway through the third, but the Penguins cough this one up. Marchenko and Werenski score about 2 minutes apart at the 9 and 11:45 mark in the third to tie it. We head all the way to a shootout where Crosby, Texier, and Severson score, and it's a 4-3 victory here for the Blue Jackets. Both goalies relatively similar numbers. Nedeljkovic 35 of 38 for a 921. Merzlikins 30 of 33 for a 909. Despite the lower save percentage, he does get the victory. Again, 4-3 here in favor of the Blue Jackets. The Lightning taking on the Islanders, another pretty big game here for both these teams. Again, the Lightning trying to catch up to Toronto for that third spot in the Atlantic, and the Islanders, of course, trying to get themselves into the playoff picture. Kyle Palmieri scores the first goal in this one, but Radish and Cirelli both counter back before the period ends, so 2-1 Bolts after one. No goals in the second, and then in the third, it's the captain, Steven Stamkos, with his 30th of the year that makes it 3-1. Anthony Cirelli would add his second of the game on the empty net to make it a 4-1 final, and a pretty convincing win here for the Bolts over the Islanders. They outshoot them 40-28. Varlamov was pretty good, but again, just not enough goal support. 36 of 39 for a 923. Vasilevsky was pretty busy as well, 27 of 28 for a 964. He's rounding into playoff form just in time, which is terrifying for whichever team the Bolts are going to end up playing. And again, they get that much closer to Toronto here with a 4-1 victory over the Islanders. The Capitals hosting the Bruins in John Carlson's 1,000th NHL game. Hampus Lindholm scores the only first-period goal. Scarboza, Beecher, and Carlson all scoring in the second, fittingly so that he would tie the game and force OT. Nothing going in the overtime, despite the Caps having a 4-minute double minor power play, thanks to a high stick from Hampus Lindholm on TJ Oshie. Again, no goals there, and then DeBrusk, Strome, Pastrnak, Milano, and Shattenkirk all scoring in the shootout. You guys can do the math there. It's a 3-2 win here for Boston, maintaining their first spot in the Atlantic. Both goalies here pretty solid. Swayman less busy than Lindgren, 18 of 20 for a 900. Lindgren 27 of 29 for a 931, but not quite enough here to get the W. The Caps will happily take home this extra point, though, in the 3-2 shootout loss to Boston. The Sabres hosting the Leafs in kind of a surprising low-scoring affair here. I feel like usually these games get going pretty quickly, but one goal in each period for the Leafs. Tavares in the first, Robertson in the second, and Austin Matthews with his 60th of the year in the third. It's just a 3-0 final for Toronto. UPL 19 of 22 for an 864, and Samsonov, of course, with the shutout completion, 34 of 34 for him. A really solid game all around. The Leafs will be pretty happy with the defensive effort in this one, despite the fact that they got outshot pretty handily, 34-22. They definitely are content with the 2 points here over their rivals in Buffalo. Again, 3-0 is the final. The Blues taking on the Sharks in a game that gives off similar vibes to that Chicago-Philadelphia one. The Sharks kind of manhandling the Blues despite getting outshot 35-20. Mackenzie Blackwood looking like his early season form, 35 of 35 for the shutout victory. Zadina, Granlund, and Cunnin all scoring in the second period. Jan Ruda would score an empty netter in the third to wrap up the scoring, and it's a 4-0 final. over a over a St. Louis team that's fighting for their playoff lives. They're trying to chase Vegas down, and this loss is a crushing one against a team that they should really never lose to, but again, just get completely goalied in this one. Joel Hofer wasn't great. He only faces 19 shots, gives up 3 on those for an .842, but again, if you don't get any goals, you can't win the game, and the Sharks can thank Mackenzie Blackwood for this one. It's a 4-0 final over St. Louis. The Stars taking on the Kraken, and once again, the Kraken continue to struggle. They lose this one by a final score of 3-0 to Dallas. No goals in the first, Wyatt Johnston in the second, and then Pavelski and Hintz both scoring in the third. Joey Decord was pretty good, but of course got no goal support. They actually only get 17 shots on Jake Ottinger. He stops all 17 of them. There's really never a lot of doubt in this game, despite the fact that Dallas only scored 3. The Kraken really struggling here toward the end of the year, and Dallas, of course, trying to maintain that number 1 spot in the Central. These 2 points help that quite a bit. They are 2 points ahead of Colorado as it stands today. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but for today, a 3-0 victory for Dallas over Seattle. Final game here, the Flames taking on the Kings, looking to snap their losing streak. Kadri, Kempe, and Pospisil scoring in the first. Coleman and Kopitar trading goals in the second, and then Mackenzie Weegar adds 1 more to extend the lead to 2 in the third. A lot of power play goals in this game, only 1 even strength, that being Pospisil's goal back in the first period. So special teams reigning supreme once again. LA only managed 18 shots on Markstrom, which is a bit concerning for a team that, playoff bound, playing a team that's not going to be making the playoffs and really doesn't have a ton of depth. But it's one game. They'll probably bounce back from it. Markstrom 16 for those 18 and .889 save percentage. Dave Riddick 31 for 35 and .886, just marginally worse. But of course, able to get the job done here is Jacob Markstrom and the Calgary Flames. A tough loss for LA, a nice little win for the Flames, who again snapped that losing skid that they were on. It's a 4-2 final, and that is it for NHL regular season recap night 164. Only 1 game today between Vancouver and Anaheim, so hopefully you guys like basketball, baseball, or are following March Madness / the NCAA men's hockey tournament, because if you're only watching the NHL today, good luck. It's a short one.